We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Monday edition of Free Association Radio. This is your host. I'm Robert Phoenix, and you are now listening to the Monday Mashup. And on this program, if you are new to it, what I attempt to do is bring together a lot of different themes and threads and churn them all up and mash them together, and hopefully we come up with some kind of interesting perspectives or points of view as a result of that. And one of the things that we also try to do here is look at images and symbols in the media matrix and beyond to try to understand the subtext for what is going on in the big picture and what is driving what we would call more or less consensual reality. So what I want to do now is I want to just take a look at the Super Bowl. Many of you saw the game yesterday. And my interest in the Super Bowl is twofold, obviously. I'm a San Francisco 49er fan, and I also wanted to see what was going down with the halftime show. And over the course of the next 60 minutes, we're going to talk about both. And but before we get there, I think before we go there, I want to bring up one thing before I get to the Super Bowl. And this actually happened on Friday night, late Friday night, and this was on my Facebook page. And I'll tell you what happened, and I'll tell you what went down as that led into all of this. I was at the local barbecue place down the road from my house. I live in Austin, Texas. Okay, so there are a lot of divergent points of view in Austin. There are people that are very liberal and very progressive, and there are people that are very conservative. And there are people that are, pretty far out. They have unique perspectives. Okay, it's no mistake that somebody like Alex Jones, for instance, would be in Austin, or Mike Adams, the health ranger in Austin, or Stephen Jackson, who was the author of the Illuminati playing cards, also in Austin, Texas. And I, of course, am here as well. So this is kind of an overview or sample of the different types of people that live here. It's a varied and eclectic place, and I like it. I like varied and eclectic. So I'm at the local barbecue joint, and my son and I are sitting down and we're eating, and there is this woman and her husband, and I didn't see them. I could only hear them at first. I saw them later. They were in line ordering. This is one of these places where you walk up, you order, and then they give you your food, then you go sit down, okay? So I hear her, loud voice, by the way, loud voice, which tips you off. And she says, making a joke, something to the effect of, Oh, you could be a little generous with the portions. Go ahead. No, that's interesting. Sort of politicking to get just a little more food. And this is a place that serves you pretty healthy portions. It's not like they're going to skimp you. She wanted to make sure she got the few extra pieces of brisket on her styrofoam container. I didn't really think much about it. Although being a Scorpio rising, I did make that association. So then she is still hanging out there by the front of the line, and then she says something to the effect of, she's holding up a newspaper or a magazine or something. I can't tell what it is, again, because I'm out of view with her. And she says, she holds this thing up, and she looks at the guy behind the counter and says, "You've got to get rid of this. Look at it. It's Obama hate, NRA gun shit. You got to get it out of here." And this is loud. And it's a big place. I think it used to be an old barn or something. Big. And everybody in there can hear her. It's like, why do you really have to say shit in a public restaurant? It's like, come on now. There are kids here. So anyway, I'm like, wow, this is interesting. My son looks at me, kind of rolls his eyes, and the guy, I actually have eye contact with the guy behind the counter. Guy behind the counter, everybody that works at this place, they're Mexican, by the way. They're Mexican. He looks at me, I look at him, he kind of smiles a little bit. So then she comes around, and I see her and her husband. They're both white, middle-aged, probably late 50s, early 60s. They don't look good, by the way. And I'm not placing a value judgment on good or bad, like they're good or bad people. Physically, they just don't look good. He's overweight, she's overweight, their complexion is sallow. They don't look like happy people either. And you don't have to be happy all the time, but, they lacked a certain spark of life. She had just a scowl on her face, this woman. Wow, it's interesting. Okay. I leave. I make a mental note. My son and I go next door. They have these little food trucks, and he went to go get some ice cream, and he threw up. I thought that was interesting. So was it the food or was it the interaction? He's a sensitive kid. I don't know. So anyway, I came back home, and I actually wrote about this. Oh, by the way, I went up to the counter to find out what she was talking about, and it was the latest issue of InfoWars, the magazine. This is Alex Jones's magazine. So it's like a newspaper, stapled and bound newspaper. And on the cover, it's "The Tyrants Want Your Guns." And the gun is broken up in a bunch of pieces. The pieces are states. It's actually a pretty clever cover, red, white, and blue. And it's funny how blue is no longer blue anymore. It's like this light blue. And I've made note of this. If you look at the blue that's been in Obama's campaign materials for the last two elections, it's not that Royal American blue. It's kind of a light sort of gray blue, which is also the same color of the blue and the star of David in the Israeli flag. It's also a blue that's associated with Freemasonry. So the blue has been replaced. And they're using the same blue. I think mostly for contrast on this cover more than anything else, because the background is black. So anyway, I went back home and I posted this on Facebook. And I thought it was funny. And someone who will go unnamed, but who is a very well-known astrologer, essentially said, probably baby boomers. Fuck the baby boomers. I can't wait till they die. And I'm paraphrasing here. And I thought it was funny, but I know his stance on the baby boomers. And then what ensued was about 60 comments on Facebook with a number of people from the Pluto and Leo quote / baby boom generation taking offense at what he was saying and sticking up for the fact that they were the first ones to kind of buck the system They didn't like what was going on in Vietnam, and they were rebelling against the man, and they were, and some of it was good, and some of it was not good. Some of it was valid, and some of it was absolutely guided and directed. And do the baby boomers have their issues? You're damn right they have their issues. Of course they do. Every generation has their issues. My generation, I got a weird generation. I'm not Gen X. I'm not the baby boomers. I'm Generation Zero. I'm the blank generation. I'm in between everybody. It's a weird notch and niche. We're also called Generation Jones, by the way. Very odd. So sitting in the middle of all this, my issue with, in terms of the baby boomers, has been that I think when they got there, and they did get there, they rose to levels of power, that the ones that were brought along to those levels of power had been co-opted. And I specifically think of the Clintons, for instance, Bill Clinton, and to a lesser extent, George Bush, because George Bush is a baby boomer. He's slightly younger than Bill Clinton, but he's a baby boomer nonetheless. So these are the people that got there and then filled their cabinets with other people from their generation who had gotten there as well. And those people have been co-opted. Those people have been brought into the corridors of power in the inner circle. And you don't get there unless you play ball, unless you say, okay, I'm going to do whatever you tell me to do. You're not going to be there. It's just plain and simple, end of story. And the ones that say no, or they get bounced on their heads. You know, I mean, look at Vince Foster. I think on some level, Vince Foster said no. Look at Ron Brown. He said no. Look at Paul Wellstone. He said no. These are all baby boomers, and where are they? Well, they're taking dirt naps, and their souls are floating around up there somewhere, reformulating how they're going to get back in the game, likely, and try to change things for the better. Or maybe they've moved on and gone on to some other dimension in some other world, and they've escaped this hellhole of self-replicating misery, lifetime after lifetime. So, but this is what happens. You say no, and you don't play. So to say that our fate is solely in the hands of the baby boomers, and that our lives would be so much better if they just all died, and I'm paraphrasing, but this is essentially what this person said, is, in my estimation, misguided and wrong. And I understand the reasoning behind it. I get it. But I'll tell you right now, there are people that are Pluto in Virgo, Pluto in Libra, Pluto in Scorpio, who are playing the game, okay? They're playing the game. And do they have a better shot, in terms of mass, in terms of numbers, to, stem the tide and change where things are headed? Maybe, maybe by their affiliation in terms of their outer planet relationship, to Libra, which is mediation, synergy, conciliation. Scorpio, transforming, changing the whole thing. That could be a possibility. But I was watching a special on the men who made America, and this was all about J.P. Morgan and Henry Ford. Henry Ford, I'm going to leave him out of the discussion. J.P. Morgan, Rockefeller, Carnegie. These are the guys and some of their contemporaries that literally built America from the ground up. Carnegie was steel, and Rockefeller was oil, and J.P. Morgan was power and electricity. And then you had the railroad barons, and but all these guys were pretty much born under the outer planet assignation of Pluto and Aries. And if you think about it, Pluto and Aries is get shit done at any cost, right? Pluto, this force, Aries, individuality, will, make it happen, don't care about the results, just do it. And this is a generation that really just did it, and they amassed monopolies, and they were tyrants. But guess what they did? They whipped the country into shape. They literally brought the infrastructure to the country. Now, I'm sorry, I'm being a little distracted here. There's somebody that's going to be bringing me a very important package. I can see them outside my studio window. So anyway, I guess what I'm saying here, and I don't want to be distracted too much, is that yes, were Rockefeller and J.P. Morgan and all these other guys, were they bad dudes? Yeah, sure they were. J.P. Morgan had the opportunity to bring Tesla into the fold. He knew Tesla. He had a strong relationship. Him and George Westinghouse, strong relationship with Nikola Tesla. But he didn't do it. He went with Edison instead. Why? Because that was the money maker. Edison was the money maker. Tesla was the game breaker. This is what happened. Leave it at the door! Sorry about that. I knew that was going to happen. So anyway, we look at the Pluto and Aries generation, and they're a lot like the Pluto and Leo generation. They're both fire signs, and they both did things that in some ways were remarkable, and in some ways were detestable. And every generation is going to have that. I'm sure that the guy who's a Pluto and Virgo helped create the barcode or the RFID chip. Somebody somewhere right now in a Verichip facility who's maybe about 32 years old is working on the computer algorithm, the code to enslave humanity. Now, the people who are paying him might be from Pluto and Leo per se, right? But I'm telling you, global enslavement is a team effort, and it crosses generations. And then what happened was there was a lot of back and forth, and it got very ugly, very, very ugly. And I just, it was late at night. I was working on the newsletter, and I'd had enough. I said, "You're out of here." And I really like the guy. He's a very respected astrologer, but at that point, I'd had enough. I'd totally had enough. And I don't like to make enemies. I really don't like to piss people off. But there were some things said in that forum that I didn't care for. And one of the things that came out of it for me, and like I said, I've had my own bias, but one of the things that came out of it for me was that I realized that we need all hands on deck. We don't have the luxury of saying, this generation is bad, this generation sucks, these kids are dark, and they're the village of the damned, and all they do is worship these false Illuminati symbols that they know nothing about. We don't have that kind of luxury. And it's true that there's going to be an inherent darkness or a shadow or a blind spot in each and every generation. But we're dealing with something very powerful, immediate, and it affects all of us. It doesn't just affect everybody who's going to be post-baby boomer. Are the guys in the sky who are flying the chemtrail planes that littered the atmosphere where I live yesterday, were they all card-carrying Pluto and Leo people? I don't think so. Are the people that fly the drones, so sit in a room somewhere and in the mountains of Colorado, are they baby boomers? Take that, you motherfucker, Pluto and Leo kid. Boom, 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 boom. Take that, you asshole Pluto and Libra turban wearing son of a bitch. Boom, 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 boom. Come on now. I had a hard time with it. And because everybody is a reflection of who we are anyway, right? What did I see? I saw my own tyrannical self right there. My own tyrannical self dominating my Facebook page, and it wasn't even me. And this is what happens. This is how we come face to face with our own projections, our own shadow. There it was. So you have to be compassionate too, right? Because it's part of you in a lot of ways. But then I drew the line when it was, denigrating other people. And we're all in this together. It doesn't matter when you were born. You figure it out. Doesn't matter when you were born. All right, let's talk about the Super Bowl, shall we? As a 49er fan, am I disappointed? Yeah, I'm a little disappointed. But there are things that they did on the field which put them in a position where they were left up to the vagaries of chance. And the vagaries of chance clearly favored the Baltimore Ravens. And I knew going into the game that it was going to be a very tough sledding for the 49ers. I had the game as a 3-point win for the 49ers. Had they gotten the touchdown at the end, it would have been right around the same spread, about a 3 to 4 point win. And it was challenging as a fan to watch the end of the game. A 49er, if you're a Baltimore fan, you don't give a shit. So let me just talk about the game for a second, and then I'm going to get into the halftime show, and then the moments of darkness, which were really strange, very strange. So as a 49er fan, they got down to the 5-yard line. They had 4 plays, and the first play that they did is they decided to run the ball. Okay, that's your call. Normally that's Frank Gore, but Frank Gore had just done a 33-yard run. He was gassed. He couldn't do that. He couldn't run the ball there. So they brought in this backup, and the backup ran the ball right to the line of scrimmage. He got 2 yards at the most. It was not a very good call. Now you have second down, and on second down, I actually forget what happened on that second down play. Jeez, I only remember third and fourth down. Third down, it was an option right, and that was not a good play. And then fourth down was a killer play. And the reason it was a killer play was because on that play, and there are people who say, oh, too bad, they don't make that call at the end of the game. Here's the problem I have with sports in general. Sports is a mirror for our lives. It's a mirror of society at large. And what do we learn from sports, or what we learn from sports in some ways gives us an insight into kind of where we are as a culture. Leading up to the Super Bowl, one of the things that came out was the fact that Ray Lewis, who was playing his last game for the Ravens, had been accused of taking a substance called deer antler. Okay, so deer antler has something inside of it that is actually a banned substance, even though they don't test for it, which makes no sense to me at all. If it's banned, why don't you test for it? Okay, there's a hole right there in the system. Ray Lewis was born in 1975, which makes him 38 years old. He'll be 38 in May. You do not come back from a torn tricep after 6 weeks at the age of 38, unless you have help, unless you've done something in order for that muscle to reattach itself and heal itself in an exponentially rapid fashion. You just don't do it. Unless you have help, you don't do it. And nobody questioned this. And I'm not saying this because I'm a disgruntled 49er fan. Bill Simmons, who's a very fine writer for ESPN, wrote a very long column about this, and it was great. It was a great column. It says, why aren't we asking the simple question, how did you come back after 6 weeks and take it's all glory to God out of it? I'll tell you how he came back. He came back because he wound up getting help. For lack of a better term, he cheated. He cheated. And what were we given as a preview to the Super Bowl the weeks leading up to it? We got Lance Armstrong, who cheated. What happened? Just days, the same day that Ray Lewis was accused of doing the deer antler. Alex Rodriguez and about 4 or 5 other players were accused of buying an estrogen blocker. They cheated. They cheated. Now, what happened at the end of the game? At the end of the game, Michael Crabtree, who, by the way, I picked in my Super Bowl preview. Here's what I said. I said later in the game, the ASC moves into Virgo. Ed Reed and Michael Crabtree's numbers move to the fore with an emphasis on them in the fourth quarter. There we go. Michael Crabtree, fourth quarter. Linebacker Navarro Bowman's Gemini Sun is poised to reap the benefits of Gemini on the MC. Look for him to make a key play. He did. He did make a key play. But Crabtree, who was a Virgo, was supposed, and he was involved in a very key play, the end of the game. And what happened was that he was playing on the outside. Colin Kaepernick called a fade route to Crabtree. Crabtree runs off the line of scrimmage. The cornerback for the Ravens, Jimmy Smith, grabbed him and clutched him and held him. He held him. Michael Crabtree was not allowed to make a play. It was a penalty. It was an egregious penalty. I don't care what anybody says about, well, you don't get that call late in the game. Well, if you don't get a call late in the game, but you get a call in the middle of the game, what the hell is that? And I'm not talking about this as a 49er fan. I'm talking about this as a reality fan. Because now what we get to see is that there are different rules for different times. There are subjective interpretations. And yeah, this may be the case, right? Maybe this is how life is in general. I was watching Platoon the other night, and there's a scene between Keith David and Charlie Sheen. And Keith David says, man, everybody knows that the rich have been fucking over the poor. Always have, always will. And so there's this layer of subjectivity that comes into everything that we do. Rules, unwritten rules, the rules of life. Oh, hey, guess what? You just got screwed over. Too bad. But what happened was, and my kids saw this, was that the Ravens theoretically cheated. And what were they done? What happened? They were rewarded for cheating. They won the game. They won the game. And what we're supposed to do, or what we're supposed to have these quote-unquote officials who represent order, who represent structure, who represent the law within the context of the game, they're supposed to step in and say, no, there was a law broken here. Now, what's subjective about it is, if that quarterback's name is probably Tom Brady or Eli Manning, I think something else happens. To be honest with you, in that moment, there's a flag, and guess what? The Patriots get the ball with, minute left, or minute and a half left, or minute 50, whatever it was, on the goal line, with 4 downs to score. Very different game. Very, very different. And so what happens? The Ravens are rewarded for cheating, and this is what my son saw. And this is the subtext now. Cheat, don't get caught, take it to the limit, take it to the edge, take it beyond the edge. Why? Everybody else is doing it. Everybody else is cheating, may as well do it. Everybody else is lying, may as well do it. And this is how the game ended. Now, let's talk about the halftime show. Okay. One of the things that I was looking at, and I did watch the halftime show, that I was looking for, obviously, is sort of the blatant symbolism that goes along with halftime shows. Now, it was there. It was certainly not as blatant as the Madonna halftime show of last year. Okay? But it was there. And one of the reasons why it wasn't as blatant was because Beyonce is a much more commercially viable artist than Madonna. When Beyonce puts out a record, she has potential to sell millions of records. She has the potential of doing lots of TV or movies. I mean, she is, at this point in her career, she's a way bigger star than Madonna is. And in some ways might even be rivaling Madonna at Madonna's height. So with somebody like Beyonce, they can't necessarily muddy the waters too much because she has too much commercial potential to exploit in that moment, though they did exploit it, but not egregiously. But it's there. So breaking it down just a little bit, first of all, what we have really with Beyonce is and if I offend some people here, I apologize. But what we have is kind of a tidied up and slightly more glamorous stripper act or stripper performance. All the women are incredibly scantily clad. I mean, she's wearing a frickin' teddy, a leather teddy on stage. Okay, it's highly hypersexualized, and it's bump and it's grind, and it's panting, it's these come fuck me looks, and this is what we are given now as entertainment. It's really just the strip club taken to your living room. That's what it is. And on stage, she had all of these other women that were doing the exact same thing. Excuse me, pretty much the same uniform as Beyonce. And then, of course, Destiny's Child came on, and they did their thing. Great. What I noticed about the stage are a couple things. One, it was all women. All women. The dancers, all women. Destiny's Child, women. Beyonce's band, all women. Although that guitarist, I don't know. That guitarist could go either way, but all women. I'm assuming that the guitarist was a woman. Fits in with the theme. So we had it was a goddess ritual, clearly a goddess ritual. And if you looked at the stage, there were two faces, and they were mirror reflections of one another. Both of those faces were women, by the way. Even my son picked up on that, 8 years old. And the mirror reflection was Gemini, and we're Jupiter and Gemini. Interesting. And then, of course, Beyonce flashed the Rockefeller Illuminati pyramid sign, and now that's everywhere. Did Beyonce flash Illuminati sign? Of course she did. Not a question of whether she did or not. Of course she did. Of course. The Illuminati sign, by the way, that's the triangle, right? And they look through it with their left eye. Okay, so the triangle with the left eye is the eye of Horus. But the triangle, if you look at it also, is a representation of the vaginal opening. That's what the triangle is. And last night, just by the placement of the mic, which she had to do if she was going to do this, by the way, the microphone is a phallus, and it was inside the triangle, so we had penetration. So it had sex. It was a symbol for sex during the Super Bowl halftime performance, right? There was also a lot of fire, some of which was real, some of which was on the screen as a cron, right? So it was a fire ritual as well. And then she sang the song Halo, and there are people that actually enjoy that song. I don't know that song that well, but a friend of mine who has been deconstructing the Beyonce stuff says that that's the song. It's a love song to Lucifer, and that's the song that essentially took Beyonce to the next level of programming. So this is what we had during the Super Bowl halftime ritual. It was a goddess ritual. And some people like, there's a person on my Facebook page who love, oh yeah, the goddess, woo, great, hey, we need more goddess. So anyway, it was a goddess ritual, and it was a sex ritual, definitely a sex ritual for sure. And then what happens after that is quite interesting. There is the TV spot, the commercial for the new Star Trek. I think it's called Darkness Descends. And guess what happens? Well, darkness descended upon New Orleans. And they had a blackout. And I was watching the game with my son, and I watched the TV, and the lights went out. I went, oh, wow. This is really interesting. And then they had a half dark and half light stadium. Half and half, right? Duality. Again, Gemini, duality, light and dark. Profound. And that lasted, I think, I had heard it was 33 minutes. Teresa, one of the listeners of the show, said it was 34 minutes, and the final score of the game is 34, which is the number 7. 33 to 34, it's a long time for the lights to be out. Now, the play that preceded the darkness was a 108-yard kickoff return by Jacoby Jones. And on that play, there was a member of the 49ers. His name is Bruce Miller. He plays fullback. He was getting ready to tackle Jacoby Jones. And what happened was that a member of the Baltimore Ravens tackled him on the play. And there is a clear, I've seen the image. Now, you can't do that. You cannot do that. You cannot tackle. If you're a defensive player, you can block somebody, but you can't pick them up and throw them down on a kickoff. It's a penalty. It's called holding. And I've seen people touch a kick returner with their pinky, or somebody on the kick return team with their pinky, and there will be a flag on the play. And on this play, Bruce Miller was thrown down as he had an angle on Jacoby Jones. Now, why is this important? Well, it's important because he scores the touchdown, and then right after that, the lights went out. And I was talking with, if you've seen the latest Batman film, there is a scene in that movie where a guy gets a kickoff return. That guy, by the way, is Hines Ward. He used to play for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And he runs the ball back for a touchdown. But as he's running, the field is exploding and then imploding from beneath him. So he's literally running ahead of this like shockwave where the field is just imploding and going down into the stadium. The players on the field and everything, they die. And in many ways, the Jacoby Jones return was mirroring that. What's really interesting, and I just found this out today, I was talking with Darren Williams before the show, and Darren was watching the game on Sky TV in England. And the commentator for Sky was Bill Belichick. And Bill Belichick was in the Batman movie. And he was the coach of the team that ran the ball back and scored the touchdown. So you had all the elements there in a kind of a strange meta-symbolic fashion to mirror or even begin to replicate the terror scene in Batman. It's interesting. It's very interesting. So then the lights go out for 34 minutes. There are people who reported smelling natural gas at the Superdome. And they have some kind of official quote-unquote statement about that. And I wonder just how much of that is actually to the point or the company line. And I'm not saying that something happened there, but I am saying, could something have happened there? Could this have been an event that did not go as planned? I'm just putting it out there. Could this have been something that could have been far worse than it actually was at that time? So the game was delayed for between 33 and 34 minutes. And the lights went back on at 9:11, apparently. That was, I think, 9:11 Central Time. So the lights went on at 9:11, which is interesting. And then the game started up, and then the 49ers began to come back. And, of course, that brings us up to the final play of the game, which I just talked about. So I was wrong on the score. Had the final play actually occurred the way it could have, then there's a very good chance that the 49ers win the game. Colin Kaepernick is the MVP, and we're having a very different discussion today. My friend Linda, who does not know a lot about sports, watched the game, and she asked me a very interesting question. She said that the patch for the Baltimore Ravens, their insignia or logo, looks like some kind of military insignia or logo. And it's funny because you get so, or I get so nerd sometimes with symbols that I look at quite a bit that every now and then I miss something. And I had to look at that again. I said, she's right. She's right. It does look like a military badge. And the way that it's placed on their shoulder pads, it looks very much like a military badge. So there's some kind of martial illusion or connection between the raven symbol. The raven, by the way, somebody else pointed this out on my website. The raven is a keeper, sort of a gatekeeper to other worlds. The raven represents magic. The raven is a spellbinder and a shapeshifter. So this is an interesting symbol to encounter as we go into 2013 or deeper into 2013 in the year of the snake. So the symbol for the year theoretically would be the raven. Now I thought based on the ascending of Thuban, which is the brightest star in the constellation Draco at game time, that the 49ers had a real fighting chance here based on the symbols. But it didn't work out, and you know what? It is what it is. And I think that my takeaway, at least with all of this, is that we live in a time where everything really is distilled down into a subjective experience, that there is no clear objective standard at this point. That is what I'm coming away with from this game. And it's not necessarily a good feeling. Looks like John Corzine at MF Global. Take the money. Take all those people money, all the money and people that theoretically who've invested with you, and make a huge bad bet, one huge bad bet using all the money and lose it all. Now, it doesn't matter whether or not those people had checked a certain box that they needed to have some kind of clearance with Corzine or anything. It doesn't really matter. The fact of the matter was that John Corzine did it, and the money's gone, and people are screwed. Bernie Madoff got away with it for years. And then he got caught. So the message here is cheat until you get caught. And then when you get caught, maybe you do a little mea culpa. That's about it. You do a little mea culpa. If you're lucky and you're a real serious offender, maybe you do some soft time in a country club facility, and that's it. You're out, you're done, you hit the streets, you're Michael Milken, you're back in the game. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is where we are. I also thought it was quite interesting that in the midst of all of this, our commander-in-chief, instead of talking about the economy, the opportunities ahead for people in this country and being a laser-like focus or having a laser-like focus and getting things back on track, what's his big priority, or one of his priorities? Well, allowing gays to be a part of the Boy Scouts. He just came out and said that. I mean, really? Is this what you're focusing on? Oh, and that, and proving to people that you're a skeet shooter with that crappy photo where you're firing a gun that looks like you've never fired a gun in a day in your life. This is where we are. It's not inspiring, people. It is not inspiring. I am inspired more by everyday people than people in positions of authority and leadership. 7 days a week, 24/7. Way more inspired. The leadership in this country and around the world is lacking, and it's far from inspirational. It's collusional as well. Speaking of collusional, Syria was attacked by Israel, and apparently, green light from this part of the world. Go get them. We're not going to do anything. And we're only, 4 days into February and 31 days, 30 days into the year. So about 34 days, 35 days into the year. Incredible. All right, you're listening to the Monday Mashup, and we've covered a lot of ground today. I was really trying to get my secret guest on, but he had an issue with the family, and somebody in his family was quite sick and did a lot of hospital time over the weekend. So that is not going to fly today. But hopefully, cross your fingers, we'll be back on track with him at some point very, very soon. On Wednesday, I will have Shelley Wu on. She's a Chinese astrologer, and we're going to be looking at the year of the snake and what that means for everybody. I'm a rat. Snakes eat rats. I have to be careful this year, apparently. And although I did have a snake girlfriend one time, and that was a quite a nice experience. I'll be upfront about that. But it is the year of the snake, and we'll get the lowdown from Shelley. On Friday, I'm going to have John Trudell, and we're going to talk about hemp in the first hour. He's become a hemp activist, and it is his connection with the Native American community that I think is quite interesting, because there are still sovereign land rights even on the reservation. So the potential for growing hemp inside the Native American community could be quite large. And it would be interesting to see where this could go and how sovereign the Native American nations or Native American tribes are in relation to a federal law that prohibits the growing of hemp. The United States is one of the few countries in the world that does not grow hemp commercially. You can go to Europe and grow hemp. The problem with Europe is that they don't have a lot of growing space. Here, there's plenty of growing space. So, you have to understand why this occurs. It's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. And then after Trudell, I'll have Debbie Goldsberry on, and Debbie is a cannabis activist, and she has a dispensary in Berkeley. I've known Debbie for about 6 years now, and she is one of the major players in the California world of medicinal marijuana and dispensaries, cannabis dispensaries. And we're going to talk about what's going on in that world and the history of distribution of cannabis for medicinal purposes. And we're also going to talk about the hurdles that dispensaries are facing now, and they're serious, they're significant. So we're going to be looking at cannabis and hemp from both angles on Friday. And somewhere this week, it's either going to be Wednesday or Friday, I'm bringing, some of you may remember Willow, who was on the show, on the astrology show a long time ago. I'm going to be bringing her back on either Wednesday or Friday. So far, it's scheduled for Wednesday, although I think Friday would probably be a better show for her to be on. And she is going to talk about alfalfa and the genetically modified strains of alfalfa that are threatening everybody in North America. And the thing with alfalfa, you have to understand, if you genetically modify alfalfa, you genetically modify everything, because alfalfa is one of the key grains that are ingested by farm animals, whether they're cows or pigs, I think chickens maybe to a lesser extent. But any of the livestock that we consume, alfalfa is going to be at the bottom of that chain. And so you genetically modify the alfalfa, you genetically modify everything else that comes in contact with that alfalfa. And the other thing too, alfalfa is pretty pervasive. And you know, there's also the possibility that there could be some kind of spore infection or spore modification that takes place with other plant species. So, I mean, alfalfa is really the Pandora's box of genetically modified organisms. And Willow, excuse me, who grew up on a farm and has a farmer, and father is a farmer still to this day, Canada is quite passionate about this. And we're going to talk about this from an activist perspective. So that'll be either Wednesday or Friday. Anyway, any way you slice it, it's shaping up to be a very good week of radio here on Free Association Radio. And if you like what you hear, if you like the guests, and you'd like to support what I do, I don't charge for this. I wholeheartedly beseech you to go to my website. And there are people who've been great, and they do support what I do, and I'm grateful for that. But if you feel like dropping a few dimes in the kitty, you can go to robertphoenix.com. I have a donate button on the top left-hand side of my website, and you can help the radio cause here and keep going and keep moving so we can continue to bring in some very good guests for your personal enlightenment. A week out from Friday, Alfred Lavermont Weber will be on the show, and we'll be talking about all that interesting exo-political stuff with, I think, one of the Examiner's most popular writers. And I know a lot of you enjoy what Alfred writes about and covers, so we'll have him on the show and get into that 2 Fridays from now. Okay, I think we've gotten it. I think we've reached the end of this Monday's MASH. What you want to do now is you want to keep your eyes on what happens over the course of the next couple of weeks. Because one of the things that we've learned with the Super Bowl halftime stuff is that it's kind of a prelude to, you know, where things go and what things happen as a result on the back end of the Super Bowl ritual experience. Last year, 2 things of note happened after Madonna did her thing at Lucas, a.k.a. Lucifer or Lightbringer Field in Indianapolis. We had the revolution in Egypt. Can't forget about that now, can we? Very big. Invoke ISIS, regime change in Egypt. The second thing that happened not long after that was, of course, the death of Whitney Houston. And we have on our end now, we have the new Whitney Houston, Jennifer Hudson, who sang at the Super Bowl. So keep your eyes open, your ears open, and see what unfolds here over the course of the next few weeks. I would assume that given the fact that Beyonce is a Virgo, Jennifer Hudson is a Virgo, 2 virgins, right, to go back to those 2 faces at the on the halftime stage, that we would be looking at something in the month of Pisces. So sort of Pisces culmination or manifestation. All right? Okay. So you know the drill. Use your head and discern what's real. Oh, somebody's calling in. Let's see who they are. They want to talk about. Hello there. Hello?
Oh.
Hello?
Can you hear me?
I can. What's going on?
Oh, hi, Robert. How are you? This is Kelly. I was just interested in hearing your perspective on the halftime show, so it was very interesting. You don't disappoint. It was interesting about the Gemini symbolism. I didn't catch that. I am a Gemini, so that was...
Yeah, it was pretty, you know, it was pretty, I was like, wow, look at that. And then just to make sure that you understood that it was two women. At one point, there were kind of glowing locks of hair coming from each one of them.
Yeah.
So it was like, okay, here we go. This is clearly Gemini, clearly two women. So it was Goddess Light. It was Goddess Light ritual at halftime.
Yeah, I heard last year's show with Sister Myra, and she was talking about the divine feminine. So I thought that, well, maybe this is a continuation of all of that energy ushering in, and I'm just curious as to what it all means, because it all sounds interesting and very metaphysical, and we can make so many different assumptions and, you know, kind of fit it into our own repertoire. But, you know, I'm always curious as to, okay, what does this really mean? Like, what is this supposed to mean to my life?
No, I hear you. I think that it probably, well, I also think that, for instance, like if you want to go to like the big time rituals, like the Olympics rituals,
right.
I really feel like the Olympic rituals in the Summer Olympics, those are portals. Those are very specific portals, and I feel like that there was a lot of dark energy that came in during those two rituals. I mean, that's, you know, and I feel like that was really multidimensional. So, you know, what this means for your life, you know, it may mean very little for you on a personal level, but it may mean something bigger on a collective level. I think one of the things also is that if you look at the representation of the players on the field, they're all males, and then on the stage they're all females. So we have the male and the female principle, but again, it's split. You know, it's this duality thing that used to get played out, and that's a theme over and over again. Like you have the two Harbaughs, right? Duality, the two brothers facing off against each other. So it's a theme that just keeps getting hammered home, and divide and conquer. That's kind of what it feels like to me. In even the Super Bowl, you know, and the fans, it's like divide and conquer, and then you get the sort of wishy-washy kind of subjective, you know, ruling, non-ruling at the end of the game, and there's no order, there's no rule of law, any of that stuff. Those are the things that are takeaways for people. Now, how that affects you on a personal level, you don't really know, because, you know, how people internalize this stuff and how they live their lives with it from that point forward. It's like chaos theory. You know, a butterfly flaps its wings in China, and then there's a monsoon off the coast of South Africa. You know, it's all chaos theory at this point. So, yeah. And at the end of the day, what do? You just got to take care of your own house, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting what you say about, I guess, the collective consciousness. That's what it is. So that makes sense.
Yeah, I think so. And I also think too that they go far and as deep with Beyonce, because I just think she's got way too much commercial clout, and they couldn't really completely go overboard like they did with Madonna. You know, they rolled the dice because Madonna doesn't sell any more records anymore.
Right. Okay.
All right, well, listen, thank you for calling in and listening. And be sure to listen on Wednesday. We're going to have some cool Chinese astrology stuff happening.
Oh, love it. Okay, I'll be there. Thank you.
Okay, take care. See you.
Take care.
Okay, so there we go. That's it. We reached the end of the show. So tune in Wednesday, Shelley Wu, Chinese astrologer and author. We're going to talk about the year of the snake and how it affects you. Use your head and discernment's real. Your heart is able and responsible. I'm Robert Phoenix. I'll see you on Wednesday.
We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.